Ford claims to be pushing like heck on their EV business, but are they actually moving forward and are they doing anything good? Well, they are gracious enough to break out their earnings to show you that they do still have profitable lines, even if they're losing a dollar or two on their EV side. I'm joined by Hans C. Nelson. Link in the description. He's got his own YouTube channel. He does great work. And you may have seen him before on the Wednesday live show, simulcast with Brighter with Herbert and Hans himself. I'm Brian. Welcome to Future Ozza. So Hans, big week, a lot of earnings coming out, and I don't know if you saw this, but Ford just reported a massive loss on every electric vehicle it sold. Now that's one way of looking at it. Ford's electric vehicle unit reported losses that soared to 1.3 billion, and that represents a $132,000 loss for each of the only 10,000 vehicles it sold in the first 3 months of the year. 10,000 vehicles. Whew, that's not very exciting considering how big of a company Ford is. Ford had announced plans to shift from traditional gas-powered vehicles to EVs in the coming years, but it's the only traditional automaker to break out results. So why do you think they break out the results of their EV sales separately from their other vehicles?
I think, if they were really trying to do this, they would actually just spin out the company completely. That's one of the things that we learned from Clayton Christensen's The Innovator's Dilemma, that almost every time that a new technology transformation is able to succeed coming from a large existing incumbent player, it has to be broken out into a separate company. Um, so I don't know if perhaps this is kind of a half measure on the part of Ford to move in that direction. That would be the optimistic take. The pessimistic take would be that they really want everyone to know how much this is losing money so that they've got lots of excuses when they pull the plug. I don't know which of those two it is, but either way, it definitely shines a light on how bad they are at making electric vehicles profitably.
It's very tough. It's very tough. I don't know if they're going to include the charts here or if I'll find them on another article, but it's tough. I mean, the revenue went down dramatically. Ford said it expects the Model E will have earnings before interest and taxes losses of $5 billion for the full year. Now, this is an advantage that Ford or any of the legacy guys have, is they can run at a loss as long as their other lines remain profitable enough to cover it. Where if you look at some of the startups, they have to keep going back to the well and hoping it hasn't run dry. The company said its intention to be having EV pricing cover the actual cost of building the EV rather than covering all the R&D within the next 12 months. I know they've been saying for years that GM and Ford have said that by 2025 they hope to be revenue positive on a per unit basis. Oh, that's brutal. Within the next 12 months. But a price war among EVs for about a year and a half has made even that measure of profitability very difficult. She said that Ford removed about $5,000 in cost on each Mustang Mach-E, but revenue is dropping faster than cost of goods sold. So they wanted to bring it down, but they couldn't, and they're losing crazy money. What do you think is the problem? Is it cost of goods sold that's the problem, or is it? I mean, what is the problem? If you were hired by Ford today to say sort this out, tell us what we're doing wrong, what would you tell them?
Man, there's so many things. The first of thing in all of it is that right now their gas cars are a better value for dollar than their EVs. That's why as soon as the macro economy starts to take a dump, the first cars that you stop selling are the least valuable cars to the consumer, and right now that's their EVs. Of course, it's their EVs because that's not the core focus of the company. They don't make their money on EVs. Obviously, they lose their money on EVs. They make their money on ICE vehicles. So when the company is in a tough spot, they have to focus on their core competency, which is ICE vehicles. So I mean, I'll go back to what Clayton Christensen said and say this company needs to be spun out. It needs to be life or death. Either it succeeds and survives by creating actual compelling, valuable electric vehicles, or it dies, one or the other. And the other huge factor that I think really is plaguing all of the legacy OEMs is that they all do these traditional project planning, waterfall development cycles that take years and years to set up a vehicle program, and then they have, couple of refreshes over the lifetime of that vehicle program, and then they move on. And that is just not the way that Tesla operates. Tesla operates in a much more agile fashion. Agile has already eaten the entire software world as a way to plan not only your product, but to manage your work and to manage your spending. And the fact that these legacy companies are still operating on a system that is not going to be fast enough to adapt to this technology is definitely another piece of the puzzle that really needs to change.
I don't know how much of that didn't come across as a foreign language to viewers, but it is a big difference in the way businesses are run. When Tesla needs to change a thing, they change a thing. When a lot of legacy companies want to change a thing, they call the supplier, they go out for bid, they request a sample. It's been 3 months. If you look at the reports from someone like Sandy Munro, who worked at Ford for decades before creating his own company to do benchmarking, to evaluate existing products and try to make them better. What he said is at Ford, you were lucky if you could get 3 or 4 changes over the course of an entire model year. And Tesla does that many sometimes in a week, because if something works a little bit better, why wouldn't we just do it now? We have the agility, and that results in better cars sooner and cheaper. And it, especially when you're doing something like EVs, which have never been done at this scale before, the ability to move quickly is critical. And I've seen some good progress with Ford, but not enough and not quickly enough. So if we look at this here, this is from The Verge. Ford said it lost $1.3 billion on the sale of just 10,000 vehicles. That's 130,000 per vehicle. This division, which oversees some of the companies as EV sales as well as software, reported just 100 million in revenue, an 84% drop from the same period last year. Now you can blame, it's Ford. You can't blame China. China is not competing in the same markets very much. These Ford EVs are not very common in China. I imagine there might be a few Mach-E's, but it's crazy to think that we look at these industry-wide trends. BYD had a terrible quarter, Tesla had a terrible quarter, Ford had a terrible quarter, but of course all of it is because people don't like Elon. Wait, what? That I think
His tweets are terrible.
Yes, Daddy Bad Tweet made Ford Lightning sell fewer units. That doesn't sound right. And they had dropped the price of these vehicles. They were already losing money. They dropped the price some more, and they still didn't move as many units as they needed to. So, yes, the company plans to spend less than it previously said it would, to the tune of 8 or 9 billion rather than 10 billion, and we'll probably be on the lower end of that range. And we're being very consistent about our discipline on profitability. And they're looking to LFP batteries. There's an obstacle there for Ford using LFP batteries. Can you tell us real quick what the big difference between an LFP and a high nickel battery like what Ford uses today is?
Energy density. So an LFP battery is going to weigh more than a high nickel battery, and Ford already doesn't have the most efficient weight in their vehicles, and so going to an LFP battery means it's going to get less range and it's going to weigh more, which kind of is a self-fulfilling prophecy and a cycle that makes it weigh more, which then you need more batteries so that it's less efficient, and it just goes on and on.
It's a death spiral, is what it is. I've seen a number of almost word for word identical comments from different users show up in the comments on YouTube in the past week saying Silverado EV, it's the true winner because it's got so much range. And I say Every time it's a brute force solution to the problem, but it is a solution. The Silverado EV gets a lot of range, like 400 or 500 miles. But the difference between that and a Cybertruck is it weighs 1,900 pounds more. That's a girthy beast. It's over a 200 kilowatt hour battery, and that is just not efficient. So if Ford wants to go with LFP, they need to first get their everything else sorted out. Maybe automatically include a free canopy for the Lightning so that it has better aero. I don't know. That seems like a very cheap solution to make things more efficient. Now, CATL has been working on these kinds of batteries. They're getting better all the time, not better quickly enough. These would be well suited to a sedan, a small car. And Ford just doesn't like making small cars. I had a chance to talk with my buddy who's a former engineer at Ford, and I said I had read the reason why they discontinued all passenger vehicles apart from the all passenger cars apart from the Mustang was because on things like the Focus, the Escort, the Fiesta, they were losing money on every single unit. And I tried to explain that no, they just weren't making as much money. And he assured me, nope, we were losing money on every unit. That's why we shifted to the bigger, heavier beasts that we see on the road today, is we were literally losing money on a per unit basis, and that was not sustainable. So yeah, more affordable EVs, which Ford is betting will help them win, especially among urban dwellers. Not everyone needs 400 or 500 miles of range. We believe that's where the adoption of EVs will grow the fastest. And I think that's reasonable because there aren't any EVs in that segment really right now. I mean, the Leaf, I guess, but it's gotten more expensive. Yeah. What do you think on that?
I definitely think, yeah, that's a wide open market segment. And if they could bring something to market there in a short period of time that was a good vehicle and compelling, that there's an opportunity. But I also know that Tesla just announced that they're going to be making new, smaller vehicles on their existing lines that are going to be cheaper than the ones that they sell. And I don't know about you, but that sure sounds to me like potentially a two-door hatchback version of the Model 3 that might be right there in that vehicle segment. Of course, long before Ford will reach it. And obviously, if consumers are choosing, the numbers show that they're choosing the Tesla over the Ford 9 times out of 10.
That is exactly what I am seeing. Yeah, so I don't know what the solution is. I don't know how they're going to get past this. I think their key is to build new factories that are dedicated, that are purpose built, and build purpose built vehicles. No more of this taking an ICE vehicle and trying to cram an electric drivetrain into it. We've seen that that introduces inefficiencies that are impossible to overcome. You can make it work, but it's going to be more expensive. And this is a place where the price is the key. Hopefully, interest rates can come down. Apart from new factories with hopefully the ability to use the cheaper LFP batteries, maybe get those batteries made in the US so that they can qualify for the EV incentives. I don't know. Is there anything else that can save them?
I guess if they get on the ball and they license FSD quickly enough to where they have a bridge in extra software related revenue that they would then share with Tesla. I mean, that to me seems like the last hope that Ford has not to end up going bankrupt or having to massively restructure sometime in the next 10 years.
Fingers crossed, I guess would be my answer to that. I just don't know if Ford is willing to spend an extra even $1,000 on hardware when they don't know what their customers' take rate is going to be. I don't think Ford is capable of looking that many quarters into the future. If they are the partner that we've been hearing about, I am fearful that they would announce that and say, but we're not going to start putting it in vehicles for another 3 years. And if that's the case, I guess go for it. But being 3 years behind, 4 years behind, Having the last primate operated vehicle on the market is going to put you at a disadvantage that is going to be difficult to explain. It's like the vehicles they were trying to sell over the past year that did not yet have the NACS handle. That people didn't want to buy it because it still had CCS. Uh, I think those are going to come back to bite them. And I saw a great analogy that I wanted to share with the people who think that hybrids are the solution. Hear me out. I know you horseless buggy carriage people are all about your gas motors, but what if we had a gas motor and a horse? That's a terrible idea. That's the worst idea. So, Ford's going to struggle. You know who else struggles is me. If you want to help me out, you can. There's a bunch of ways to do it. Your support is why I'm able to do this because YouTube, is very difficult. It's very difficult. So, in the meantime, you can head on over to the old Hans C. Nelson channel, link in description. And if you like having him on, maybe tell me so, because otherwise, how would I know? Everybody else, like, subscribe, do the usual. You know what you're doing. Hit the thumb in either direction. It's decorative, but it counts. So it doesn't actually hurt. If you didn't like it, by all means, thumbs down. I welcome it. And you know what else? Stay tuned, stay juicy, and I cannot wait to hear from you, clever robots, in our electrified future.